We are 4 days away from launching the design system for Divi 5, and I'm super excited because today I'll be showcasing section padding, containers, background colors, the gap scale, and I had to redo the headings and the text. And the reason why I had to redo them is because I got a message here from Mark Fletcher, and he suggested that these headings K1 to H1 to H6 should be associated with their heading elements, and I think this was a very good idea. So I went back to the drawing board, and I'm glad to say that I've taken that on board and this has been implemented now. So on our text here, so we're going to talk about the text first and then we're going to go to the headings. So for our text now, if you select your text like that and you want to select the associated preset that goes with it, you'd come over here to your text and then you click on assign preset. So now you've got text extra small. Now over here, let's say you want to make the text bigger. You'd come over here to the text, and let's say you want small, you'd select that. And then over here, let's say you want to select your normal body text, you'd select that. So everything now is specifically under the text, and the same applies with the headings. So in fact, before I go to the headings, let me show you what we also have and how this is going to work. So let me just do one more here. So if I duplicate that, if we want to have larger text, we would come over here and you can choose body text large. Okay, so that is specific for the text, which is now easier to find and easier to locate. All right, so there's also other things that we can do here, and let me just show you how to do that. I'm just going to get rid of this, and let's just add a text module again. And this time we're just going to add a little bit of text so I can show you the other presets that come with our text module. All right, so if we select our text here, if you come over here to the top, this is where now we can get our eyebrow. We can also use our label, okay, and we can also choose the badge like that. And the badge also comes with different colors, by the way, so you can choose your badge inverse, for example. And we also have the status. Okay, so you can go with status success, status warning, and status error. Okay, but of course there'll be more text in here. Now let's move on to the headings. So I'm just going to go in and add a single column here, and I'm going to add my heading module. So with our heading module selected, as Mark suggested, is it Mark? Yes, it is Mark Fletcher. Yes, as Mark suggested, if I now come over here to design, I can assign my headings under the heading text. So here I can go in and say heading 1. Then let's duplicate this a few times. I can go in and say maybe this one needs to be heading 2. Boom. This one here, heading 3. I can go in and say heading 3. And then this one here can be heading 4. This one here can be heading 5. And then finally we have heading 6. So now everything is in the right place. And if we wanted to also do our display headings, this one here can be display large. This one here can be display medium. And then this one here can be display small. So as you can see, everything is in the right place and everything is responsive. So if I were to come over here to the tablet, you can see you don't have to make any other changes to make sure that everything fits properly. So you can see that everything looks great on all devices. Okay, so let's move on to our next item, which is our section padding. So let's just add a bunch of text in here. So now with my text for our section padding, if I select my section here, now I can come over here to the top and then I can choose extra small. Okay, so that's our padding for extra small. And then we can go to small. And then we can go to medium. We can go to large. Now, this padding as well is responsive, and if I come over here, you can see that the size here has adapted to the screen size. You see that? So this is a beautiful way to design. Everything is going to be consistent. It saves you from going into each and every breakpoint and assigning a value to make sure that everything looks great on all devices. So this really solves the issue, or solves the problem. Okay, so let's move on to the next item, and this is also very important. Now, what you'll find is a lot of designers do not know how to apply this. So first of all, let me just make sure that this is set to my body text. Okay, now most designers, when they have a paragraph of text that looks like this, they assume that this is fine, but in design this is not correct, because this is way too long. So the question now is, how do we know what size to use? Now, thankfully, our design system has that in place. So if you want to make sure that this follows the right settings or the right width, you'd come over here and then you choose your text width, and now it has been selected. Okay, so this is ideal. It's perfect for readability. So if we were to duplicate this, and let's say we have another style, so this could be your normal text width, but if you want it slightly bigger, you'd go with that. So this now becomes your wider text width. So this is where your paragraph text would stay, and if you have any say headings, you'd add it over here. So we also have more. If I duplicate this, we also have situations where we have content inside. So let's say we have 3 columns in here. Ideally, we want to have this as a content section, okay? Because now it has content. Maybe it has a blurb. So I would come over here and choose my content width. So to make sure that this looks like content, how about we add blurbs? Okay, so maybe that would make it look much better. So if I go in and add my blurb there a few times, and then let me just use Flexbox. So we're going to come over here to the layout, and we're going to set it out like that. So this is how your content would look like. Okay, and then there's also other situations where you may want to use, let's say, more items in here, and you really want to add a dashboard. So a dashboard would require this to be a bit wider. So you'd go in here, and we also have that. So we have our text width large. Okay, so let's get rid of this one. So now you can see it's larger. It's much closer to the edge. Now, if you want to take this a step further, there's also full. Okay, so full is very exciting because it takes everything edge to edge, and this is where you can add either a full image in here, and this will just cover pretty much everything. So this is actually very important to have these containers structured in this manner, because it gives you the right width to use as you're designing. Now let's move on to the next item, and these are our background colors. So in design, in fact, let me duplicate this so you can see where we are, and I'm just going to bring this back to, let's go with content width, sorry. There we go. Okay, so there are cases where you are working on 2 sections, and sometimes to differentiate them, you're going to need to have some colors. So by default, you are going to have colors which you can select easily, and I'm going to show you in a moment how easy that is. So if we were to come over here to this section and you wanted to apply a background, now you can go to your presets, and we have different type of backgrounds here. So you can have a muted background, which is just this light gray. You can also have an inverse, which is the dark version. You can also have the primary, and there's also a secondary. We also have a background subtle. So as you can see, this distinguishes your backgrounds, but they are very easy to find colors over here. So this just makes the whole design process much easier. Okay, So I prefer to work with muted. So this differentiates my backgrounds. Okay, now let's move on to the next item. Now this is also very, very important in design. So what we're going to do here is to just get rid of all this, and then we're going to start again. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to build something so basic, and then I'm going to show you how this next feature is very important in our design system. So let's start off with an image. In fact, let's start off with a group. And then in this group, we're going to add an image. And then after the image, we're going to have a heading. And then after the heading, we are going to add some text. And then after the text, we're going to have a button. Okay. Right, so we have a few items here. So what we're going to do is we are going to stylize this a little bit. So we're going to go into the image here, and then we are going to add our image. Okay, great. And then for our heading here, now I want you to see how faster it is to design with a design system. So for my heading, I want it smaller. So I'm going to come over here to design, heading text, and then we're going to go with heading 4. And then for our body text here, I'm just going to go in and go with small as well. And then for my button, I'm going to go in and use a small button. So I'm going to go with primary button small. Now, I don't know why the text has changed, and these are some of the reasons why it is very frustrating sometimes when you create a preset and things don't work out. This preset was done yesterday. I created this yesterday and I thought everything was working fine, but of course you can see that this needs updating. So anyway, I'm going to update this preset in real time so you can see what needs to be done here. So I'm going to go in and select my preset. Over here, I'm going to go into the button, and I need to go over to the text. So for our text here, I need to go in and make sure I choose my body text. Now we can see here, this hasn't changed, which is a bit worrying. And you can see my color here has been assigned, but it is not showing. So if I reset it, I can see here nothing is changing. All right, but anyway, okay, let's remove this for now. I'll fix that, and by the time we launch, everything's going to be working fine. In fact, this will be an update for the next video. So now that we have these 3 items here, I'm going to select my group settings, okay, and we're going to apply some padding around it. So I'm going to come over here to my spacing, and then I'm going to go with padding small. Okay, now I also need a background to this, so I'm going to come over here to the background, and using our latest update, I'm going to go with my subtle background. In fact, that's a bit too much. Let's go with muted. Okay, so now we have this element that we've just designed, but you see we're not done yet because we need to sort out the spacing. So now with that selected, I am going to go to design, and then I'm going to apply gap 0. Okay, to remove all the gaps between all of my items, and then I'm going to go in and intentionally add it. So I'm going to first of all select my heading, and then over here on spacing, I'm going to go with margin top, and I'm going to make sure that it is medium. Okay, and then this one here, margin top, is going to be small. So margin top, small. Oops. We might even go with margin top extra small. Okay, so that's looking great. Now I can duplicate this a few times. So the reason why I've duplicated this is because I want to show you our next feature, which is our auto grid. So if I select my row settings, I can now go into content, column, okay, and then over here on the top, I can go and choose my auto grid. Now I have a grid system that I've just created, but you see it doesn't end there, because what I can do here now is I can also select the gap, okay, between the items. So if I choose small, you can see now the gap between my items is now small. So you can just design this quickly. You can go even medium, and that looks, you know, okay as well. So now if I were to come over here to my tablet view, you can see it is responsive and everything looks great in all devices. The text has gone a bit smaller, and the grid also has auto aligned. So that is our grid system. So I've covered the section padding, the containers, the background colors, the gap scale, the headings, and the text. I'm looking forward to the next update tomorrow as we count down to the launch of our Divi design system. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. And if you want to support the work that I'm doing here, you can do so by buying me a coffee. I'll leave a link to that in the video description below. Thank you very much for watching.